Welcome to ITI's podcast. We call it Download on Tech. ITI is the global trade association of the technology industry, representing the world's technology innovators. When you listen to episodes of Download on Tech, you'll hear from leaders at the most innovative technology companies, from policymakers, and from influencers from around the world. Our guests share their perspective on the intersection of innovation and public policy. Today, we're thrilled to welcome Trevor Rudolph, who is Vice President for Global Digital Policy and Regulation at Schneider Electric. Trevor directs the corporation's technology policy and regulatory affairs strategy across North America, Europe, and Asia. Prior to joining Schneider Electric, Trevor served as Chief of the Cyber and National Security Unit at the Office of Management and Budget in the U.S., where he played a pivotal role in shaping U.S. cybersecurity policies and defense. Trevor, we are thrilled to have you on the show. Welcome, bienvenue, and bonjour.
Thank you, Jason. Happy to be here.
Well, Trevor, we're going to talk today about a very specific topic. It's called secure by operations. And that phrase is going to come up a lot during our conversation. And I think it's really important that we start with the fundamentals. Help us understand what secure by operations is and a little bit about Schneider Electric's approach to secure by operations. But first, let's define our term. What is secure by operations?
Sure. Appreciate the question. So in one sentence, it's the need for a community-driven approach to securing assets and systems within critical infrastructure throughout the world. And spoiler alert, this is not as easy as it may sound.
Yeah, it certainly does not sound easy. So appreciate the spoiler alert, but I'm already keen to dive into this a little bit further. And it's, as you described it, clearly about securing systems and environments. So when we think about secure by operations, it's about securing an operational environment. Talk a little bit about the importance of securing an operational environment and maybe share some practical guidance on how to do that.
Sure. So in short, it's very important that two fundamental things happen within the operational technology value chain. First, manufacturers like Schneider Electric must design and build products and systems with secure by design principles in place prior to sale. Right. And so you're seeing a big emphasis for manufacturers to do just that, I would say, over the last, 5+ years. But second, the purchasing customer end user, which in a lot of cases is critical infrastructure owners and operators, they must deploy operational technology, products and systems in a cybersecurity manner that's consistent with manufacturer guidance. So for the products that we sell, for example, we include cybersecurity hardening guidance, which walks customers through how to deploy products and systems securely. Such guidance will walk through basics like not reusing default passwords, ensuring the devices are not connected directly to the public internet, and ensuring that users regularly update and patch relevant systems as vulnerabilities are discovered and mitigated. Again, this is not happening at scale like in the way that we would like to see, but that's essentially what we're talking about when we say secure by operations.
It is interesting to think about how hard a challenge this is. When we hear about cybersecurity breaches, it's so rarely through something that you can say, well, of course, that was how cyber criminals got in. It's sometimes it's indirect ways. It's through hardware or software that's years old that nobody thought to secure. It's a pathway in that might not have been a direct route. It's human behavior that results in credentials being stolen. So many different factors. Why is this so hard? Why is it so difficult for companies to, particularly companies that want to do the right thing? Nobody wants a breach. Nobody wants a cybersecurity incident. Why is this so hard in practice?
Yeah, it's hard to diagnose, I would say, or to establish generalities, I would say, in all cases. I mean, frankly, it could be due to a lack of qualified cybersecurity staff in some cases. A lot of times an integrator may install a product incorrectly, or simply a mistake or an accident. What we do know is that through our partnership with BitSight, we can see vulnerable devices exposed to the public internet installed within critical infrastructure all around the world. And one of the practical challenges that we have is when we identify a vulnerable product or system, we usually can't see who owns this product because the IP space is actually obfuscated by the internet service provider for privacy and security reasons. So typically, when we try to alert the ISP that we've got a vulnerable device or we can see a vulnerable device, we actually struggle to get through to the right people at the ISP who can actually act on the information. And so actually in a minority of cases, can we identify correctly the underlying customer when we have actionable intel to alert them to a vulnerable device where mitigations need to be deployed.
Interesting. So you can do everything you can at Schneider Electric. Your customer can do everything they can with your equipment and services. But there are other service providers and other equipment manufacturers and other players in the game. And if they're not doing the right thing or you can't coordinate or collaborate with them, the whole ecosystem is at risk. So, obviously one question, given that we're having a conversation about technology policy, is you've identified some practical business challenges. What is the role of policymakers, if any, if policymakers do have a role, to try to address this multifaceted challenge of lots of people, lots of players, lots of products, lots of services? What can policymakers do to help out?
Yeah, I think there is a role for the policymaker in this particular scenario. We actually have a model in the United States where the Cyber and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, has what's called administrative subpoena power or authority to actually compel the ISP to reveal the underlying customer IP space for the purposes of alerting end users to cyber threats on their networks, just as I've described in this scenario of secure by operations. We know through our research, though, that such authority is not widespread throughout the world. CISA is actually rather unique in this regard. So we've got this recurrent challenge of contacting the underlying end user, or not being able to contact the underlying end user, as the case may be, when we identify these issues.
Yeah, so you added another element to the challenge, which is there are hundreds of countries on the planet, and they don't all adopt the same approach to regulation that may be necessary in these cybersecurity threat environments. So I want to ask you about the global perspective on regulatory policies. You operate globally. You have global responsibility on behalf of Schneider Electric. In fact, last time you and I saw each other in person was in Brussels. So I know you're operating all around the world. I actually don't even know where you are today. It's the magic of broadband. So can you share with us your global perspective here? We know that regulatory policies are crucial to how we think about security. The things you've been talking about, securing products, the operational environment, the need to secure that, and even frameworks as Schneider Electric has developed for how to look at this. What are some of the regulatory trends you're seeing globally, and how are you able, as a company that operates in almost every country on Earth, how are you able to adapt to this patchwork of regulatory protocols?
Well, first of all, I'm actually in Brussels right now. Happy to say that I did see the sun today and yesterday.
Very unusual.
It's a bit of a record for February. But broadly speaking, I would say that policymakers, and you've seen this actually in writing, in the case of the U.S. National Cyber Strategy from the previous administration, that the policymakers are increasingly thinking that the prevalence of cyber attacks that we've seen globally is a result of market failure for industry to proactively address these threats. And the reason that's so important is policymakers are reacting by enacting increasingly heavy regulations to ensure that products sold into the market are cyber secure prior to market entry. And so we see this in the case of the Cyber Resilience Act, in the case of the European Union, but even on a voluntary basis with programs like the Cyber Trust Mark in the United States, or the Singapore Cyber Labeling Scheme released by the Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore. Um, the problem with these regulations, in my view, is that the responsibility does not start and stop with the manufacturer when it comes to cybersecurity. As I've already described through the course of our conversation today, but there's an entire ecosystem, right, that's responsible for the secure development, commissioning, operation, and then eventually decommissioning of operational technology assets throughout the world. So in my view, we've got to continue to push this kind of multi-stakeholder responsibility paradigm with policymakers if we want to see real change in this space.
Interesting. And when we talk about that kind of collaboration, I do think it's interesting, as you've described this ecosystem that has so many different players in it. But there's also the government itself, and regulation is important, as you noted, where there's a market failure. But we all prefer a world in which government is a partner, not a parent, in the process. And given how important collaboration is to addressing these cybersecurity concerns, I wonder if you can share something that you've seen go really well in this area, collaboration among manufacturers and end users and government in this area of secure by operations. Can you give us an example of something that's gone really well, a partnership or an initiative that showcases kind of this power of collaboration that you're talking about?
Yeah, I would say, as I've already mentioned, I would just simply reiterate that we've got some really good news in the US. We've got a strong partnership, as an example, between CISA and Schneider Electric, specifically on working with CISA to actually identify and then communicate directly with end users when we have actionable cyber intel that the customers need to tend to. We've had some success up to 40% of the time when we have information, actionable information that we can bring to CISA. We're actually able to mitigate some of those issues that we're seeing through our partnership with BitSite. But I would say, in 2025, we really have to focus on bringing this entire ecosystem together. Right? We need to have end users. We need to have system integrators. We need to have the ISPs. And we need to have regulators all around the world together to the extent possible in one room to solve this challenge once and for all.
Yeah. And 2025 is a year where we've got a new administration in the US. We have recent elections and a new commission in the EU, elections around the world. So it's definitely going to be an interesting global challenge. And I know you could talk for a very long time about all the interesting developments in all those markets. But I want to end our conversation here in the U.S. I say here in the U.S. where I am. You're in Brussels. But here in the U.S., we've got the Trump administration up and running a couple of weeks in. We don't have a fully fleshed out operation across cybersecurity departments in various agencies because they're just getting underway and we're in the midst of the confirmation process. But I want to ask for your kind of roadmap for 2025, if you will, in the US, and in particular, what opportunities you see to advance this secure by operations roadmap and how you're looking to the Trump administration to partner with industry and policymakers around the world to kind of strengthen cybersecurity, particularly across critical infrastructure, critical sectors.
Well, let me first just say that I think of a human embodiment of the importance of strong transatlantic relations, and the importance of a strong partnership between the European Union and the United States is so fundamentally important for everyone's interests. And so I hope that cooler heads prevail as we continue into 2025 and 2026. I'm actually hopeful on that regard. I think the partnership is just simply too strong, but there's going to be some turbulence along the way. As it relates to the Secure Bay Operations program specifically, I have to say that I'm pretty optimistic. The reason I'm optimistic is we're not talking about complex technical challenges. as it relates to this initiative that we're spearheading here, but practical challenges that I think can actually be solved through open communication, dialogue, and collaboration with all relevant stakeholders. Um, we're going to continue to lean on CISA, I would say, in 2025, regardless of who's at the helm there. But I would say, really need to focus some of our efforts on the Federal Communications Commission to get their help facilitating more constructive conversations with the ISPs. And, as I've mentioned already, this is a global challenge that all countries have an interest in solving. So in 2025, we want to work across national borders to bring stakeholders together and address this challenge, like I said, once and for all.
Well, we're looking forward to working collaboratively with Schneider Electric, as we always do at ITI, on addressing those global challenges, and appreciate your emphasis and your work on bringing global governments together as you bring global industry together. Because, as you noted, we can't address these important cyber challenges alone. We need the entire ecosystem of both government and industry rowing in the same direction. And it's great that you're doing this work to help make that happen. And Trevor, really enjoyed our conversation and appreciated the opportunity. It was a great pleasure to have you on the show today. I appreciate your sharing your insights on secure by operations and the importance of transparency and how collaboration and regulation are shaping the future of cybersecurity. Great pleasure to have you on today.
Thank you, Jason.
Our guest today has been Trevor Rudolph, who is Vice President for Global Digital Policy and Regulation at Schneider Electric. And thank you for joining us on ITI's Download on Tech podcast. You can find future episodes on our website, itic.org, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. I'm Jason Oxman, ITI's President and CEO, and I look forward to connecting with you next time.